The Geopolitics and Empire podcast is joined again by international law professor Dr. Francis Boyle. He has served as counsel and advisor to many national and international bodies on numerous international issues, including on issues related to the Middle East. I've had a little bit of experience myself studying under such experts. One of my professors was Dutch-American lawyer Curtis Dobler, who served on Saddam Hussein's defense counsel. I also studied under Ibrahim Sous, the late Yasser Arafat's brother-in-law. And so I thought to speak with Dr. Boyle again to get his take on what's happening with these louder calls that are emanating from Washington for war with Iran, as well as other related such issues regarding what's happening in the Middle East. Thanks for coming on again, Dr. Boyle.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm my best to your listening audience, and happy holidays to everyone.
Same to you. And I thought I'd just plug your books again. You know, don't forget Biowarfare and Terrorism. I got my copy here, as well as Destroying Libya and World Order. And I just wanted to mention that, you know, we last spoke in January when you broke the news on this podcast of the coronavirus being a bioweapon, and the interview went viral, which was then vaccinated by YouTube and sent into oblivion. So I don't know if we're going to start a trend here, because I wanted to talk, as I said, about Iran this time. And as you were mentioning, you know, last night, the headlines came out that the U.S. military had been put on alert for a potential Iranian attack in the Middle East. And you've written a lot about this in your book. And before we just look at what's happening this week with these provocative actions, to give our listeners maybe just a quick context, you know, war with Iran has already been planned for 2 decades, if not more, if not since the 1990s, when the Wolfowitz Doctrine and Project for a New American Century were put together. NATO Commander Wesley Clark revealed that in 2001, the U.S. had plans to take out Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finish off with Iran. Also yesterday, we saw fresh U.S. airstrikes in Somalia. So, you know, we've pretty much completed that list except for Iran. And you've written in your book that this is all part of the Pentagon's 2000 joint vision of obtaining full spectrum dominance over all of humanity, interestingly, by 2020, which is this year. So before we look at these provocative actions that are occurring right now, could you just flesh out for listeners a bit this imperial project and why Iran is so important?
Well, you are right that General Clark said after visiting the Pentagon after 9/11 that they told him there was a war plan to take out all of those states, Arab Muslim states. Iran is Persian. So those war plans have been there, and you're also correct. Every one of those states has been taken out or else dismembered in the case of Sudan, except for Iran. Iran's the only one now in the strategic Persian Gulf region with all the oil and gas that has not yet been destroyed and taken out, according to the Pentagon's war plan, going all the way back to 2001. So you are correct. And that, I'm afraid, is what we are facing now, a potential war with Iran. You just saw the Trump administration sending 2 B-52 bombers all the way over from Barksdale Air Base directly to Qatar and flying around, even in circles, provocatively, clearly a provocation to Iran. B-52s, as you know, they're nuclear capable. I don't know if they had nuclear weapons on there or not. I guess they say they might not have, but we really can't believe anything they're saying. They've denied its provocation. Well, of course, that's a lie, and we know it. Then we also have the recent assassination of the head of the Iranian nuclear program, undoubtedly by Israel, and with a green light by the United States. Pompeo was out over there already meeting with Netanyahu, and I'm sure Netanyahu ran this by him. They're in cahoots, and you have to understand Israel it's a cat's paw for the United States. They don't do anything without our approval, whatever you think. I'm afraid we could see more provocations between now and January 20th, when the inauguration takes place. It could be that, as you're seeing right now in the media, there's enormous instability in here in the United States, produced by the Trump-Biden disputed election. We don't know how that's going to turn out, but it's clearly an unstable situation. It could be like this all the way up to Inauguration Day in January 20th. We could see a wag the dog phenomena by Trump to attack Iran in order to consolidate himself domestically here in the United States. If he were to attack Iran, as you know, almost all of the U.S. news media, the mainstream news media, are Zionist. So they will, I think, for the most part, immediately hop to it, salute and ship out. So there's very little opposition here in the United States. There are some peace movements I've worked with, peace groups, but very little opposition. And it's extremely dangerous for Iran. And then finally, we know for a fact that at the end of the Bush Jr. administration, Cheney and all the neoconservatives here in the United States, starting about August, before he left office in January, pushed Bush Jr. heavily to go to war against Iran. Again, it was first Afghanistan, then Iraq. They wanted him to go to war against Iran. There was massive pressure put on him. To such an extent, he wrote in his memoirs, according to the reports, yes, they were all pushing for war against Iran, but I decided to leave it to the next president rather than start a third war. So that's going on right now as we speak. All the neocons, the Zionists, they're all, the Israel lobby, are pushing Trump to go to war against Iran. And it could be, the deal will be that if you go to war against Iran, we, all the Zionists here in the United States and our Zionist-controlled news media, will support you. And then Trump can use that to get himself reelected in the new Congress on January 6th. Up to January 20th. He, whatever people think of Trump, he's a pretty shrewd operator. I guess developed all those years dealing real estate swindles in Manhattan. So I wouldn't put any of this past Trump. And yes, it would be extremely dangerous. A British think tank found a number of years ago, they attack Iran, they could kill maybe 2 million people. They just tested out a new B-61 atomic weapon, a bunker buster. That was done on purpose to signal to Iran that, they could take out their most hardened and deeply buried military facilities with nuclear weapons. That was just done. So the signs are not very good. So far, I think the Iranians understand this and have not allowed themselves to be provoked. Again, Trump wants to provoke them, and that he can then use as a pretext for war, just like he did by flying that drone directly into their airspace and came 10 minutes away from war the last time. But this is go for broke for the Zionists, the Israel lobby, Israel, and maybe one way that Trump figures he can get elected president and inaugurated January 20th. So it's a very dangerous situation here that confronts the United States and, I regret to say, the Islamic Republic of Iran. I think they need to cool it. I think they understand this. Certainly the leadership there does, and not allow themselves to be provoked. The problem is, of course, I'm afraid that there will be continuing escalations by Trump and Israel, and provocations. And at some point, it will be hard for any self-respecting government there in Iran not to respond, as they did after the Americans murdered General Soleimani. As you know, they launched short-range ballistic missiles on a U.S. Base there in Iraq, but they told the Americans they were coming, so the soldiers basically were in their shelters. But next time they might not tell the Americans they're coming. Plus, you've got repeated provocations there in the Straits of Hormuz by U.S. warships. So I wish I had a better analysis of the situation at this time. Basically, it's so volatile here in the United States that anything could happen, and especially with Trump as president. And by the way, his advisor, his top guy there, Pompeo, he pushing all this. He was behind me at Harvard Law School. He's a sharp guy, but he's a militarist warmonger from the get-go. And he certainly would like to see war against Iran. After the shoot down of the drone, you had Pompeo, Bolton, and bloody Gina Haspel, head of the CIA, all pushing Trump to go to war against Iran at that time. Bolton is gone, thank heaven for that, but Pompeo is just as bad.
Yeah, and you've made the case. So, like we've seen the last 20 years, this trend, Wesley Clark spelled it out. They have a plan. They've gone down the list. I was reading, it seems every election cycle, we've seen Prime Minister Netanyahu call for an attack on Iran right before U.S. Elections. He did that in 2012, right before Obama's re-election. He was calling for an attack on Iran. And there were reports that right before this election, like in October, that he again was egging on war with Iran. And as you mentioned, they keep pushing. Soleimani in January, the nuclear scientist, recently the reported drone attack on the Iranian Guard commander. They're just attacking Iranian nuclear and missile facilities. And as you said, they want to create this pretext. Now there's talk of...
Well, and also to add to your list, Israel basically is waging de facto warfare against Iranian troops in Syria. And remember that Syria is the legitimate government there, and they legally invited Iran to come to their defense under Article 51 of the UN Charter, collective self-defense, against Obama's jihadists trying to overthrow them. And Israel now has been basically waging an illegal de facto war against Iran in Syria. So we have to understand, as we speak today, there is warfare between Israel and Iran in Syria, and all this has the approval of the Trump administration.
There's also been talk of, in the U.S., of a cyber attack coming from Iran. I would kind of attribute that to a possible false flag operation, to serve as a pretext. We know the U.S. has come out and said, we'll dress up American soldiers as Iranians and then have them attack us to create a pretext. That has been officially, Seymour Hersh broke that story in 2007. And so, could they use any kind of, even an accident? I mean, could war really be imminent? Because this has been going on for 20 years, but is it a real possibility?
I'm afraid it is. This is go for broke, both by the Israelis and the Zionists here in the United States. This might be their last opportunity to take out Iran as they see it, because Biden has indicated he is prepared to go back to the Obama JCPOA. I have read and analyzed the entire JCPOA and given interviews on it. And please understand, I'm a political independent. I didn't vote for Trump or Biden or Trump or Clinton. I didn't even vote for Obama twice. I vote for independent candidates. So I'm not here as an Obama supporter, but I do support that JCPOA. Despite all the lies that Trump told, I read that whole agreement. And it was clearly a capitulation by Iran to almost all the demands by the United States. I'm not criticizing them. They're in a desperate situation over there. The United States was basically waging economic warfare against them, and they decided, fine, we don't really intend to have nuclear weapons anyway, so we'll just, pretty much capitulate here, and hopefully we will get sanctions relief. And that's what happened. Indeed, if you doubt me, you can see on YouTube 2 press conferences given after the JCPOA was signed, one by Secretary of State Kerry and the other by the Iranian Foreign Minister Zarif. Now, I listened very carefully to these 2 press conferences, and at the end of listening to them, I said to myself, one of them is lying, because it's clear they're saying completely different things to their domestic audiences. And I couldn't tell which one was lying. I wouldn't put it past Kerry lying. But when I actually got the documents and read through them, everything Secretary of State Kerry said in that interview was correct. I don't dispute anything he said. And basically, Foreign Minister Zarif was trying to sell this capitulation to his own people in Parliament. Well, of course, that had the approval of Ayatollah of their Ayatollah, their Khamenei. So fine. I mean, that was their decision. And also Secretary of Energy Moniz, who was involved in those negotiations, Secretary of Energy, he also gave a press conference. I listened very carefully to everything he said about this agreement, and it was correct. There was nothing that I could disagree with in there. So it's clear that the JCPOA was definitely to the advantage of the United States. And again, I'm not blaming the Iranians. They were between a rock and a hard place, and they didn't intend to have nuclear weapons anyway. So as they saw it, fine, we'll just trade it all away, almost all of it, in to get the sanctions relief, which they did. So fine, and everyone went on. Trump came in, and at the behest of all the Zionists, including Adelson, a big supporter, contributor, he sabotaged the entire thing. And everything that he and Pompeo have said about the JCPOA being a bad deal, etc., is a total lie. Total lie. So the Iranians are back now where they were, hoping that, Biden has said he's prepared to go back to the JCPOA, and hoping to hold out until Biden is in there on January 20th, assuming Biden gets in there on January 20th. It's now going to be decided by the Supreme Court over the weekend. We don't know. So the Iranians are holding out. Now, some of the Americans around Biden has said, well, we have some other conditions here that we want to add and not go straightly back to the JCPOA. President Rouhani has just said, well, we can go back to the JCPOA immediately, which can't be done, and then we can negotiate from there. That's the way these things are normally done. You conclude an international agreement like the JCPOA, and then you move on to the next stage. I would hope if Biden were in there, there would be a clean, straight return to the JCPOA without further conditions. Rouhani just said that they would go back to the situation it was under the JCPOA with the sanctions being lifted. So I would hope that could be done under Biden, but that's the problem. You see that Trump and Adelson and Pompeo, all the American Zionists and the Israelis don't want that to happen, which, creates an enormous pressure incentive to attack Iran. I think, this could be the Zionists' last chance to take Iran out, because Iran is the only state now in the entire Persian Gulf that doesn't do what the Americans tell them to do. That's the problem. They don't take orders. They went along with that JCPOA for reasons I explained to you, but they don't take orders. They have enormous quantities of oil and gas there, and they control that strategic Strait of Hormuz. So that's the situation we're in. All those forces are there and in play. As I said, it's a very complicated U.S. domestic and international situation. I've tried to explain the dynamics at work here as best I can.
Yeah, I agree. I also had the similar conclusion on the JCPOA. Just one more question on Iran and nukes. It seems that Washington has been itching to test out for the first time their so-called tactical nukes. And not only that, U.S. is the only country in the world, I believe, that has preemptive nuclear strike policy. And so, if anything did happen, would we see them, U.S. drop a mini nuke, strategic tactical mini nuke?
Yes, that's in the U.S. war plans, right? That going back to Bush Jr., the use of non-strategic nuclear weapons have been thoroughly integrated into U.S. war plans in the military. When we're done here, if you could send me an email, I gave a big speech in Malaysia on this precise issue at the request of the then retired Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad. I can send that to you, and it goes through the war plan, integrating U.S. Tactical nuclear weapons at all stages. So you are perfectly correct. They would be fully prepared to use nuclear weapons. That's why they tested out the nuclear capable bunker busting bomber just 2 weeks ago. It's nuclear capable, and sure, if they have to, they're fully prepared to use nuclear weapons against nukes against Iran. Yes, I don't doubt it for a minute. This British think tank has said it. If that happens, we could be talking of millions of dead Iranians.
And to move on a little bit to a slightly different topic, but which I think is related, the Trump administration, particularly with Jared Kushner, has been miraculously formulating peace deals in the Middle East, where Israel is normalizing relations with its neighbors, the UAE, Bahrain, Sudan, and just yesterday, Morocco, which Russia came out, I think, yesterday or today, saying that the U.S. Recognition of Morocco over Western Sahara is a violation of international law. But this normalization between Israel and its neighbors seems to be unprecedented. And on top of that, Israel is selling weapons and equipment to UAE and others. And also, a lot of these countries formed the International Security Alliance, something that was formed by France and the UAE. So it seems like there's this process of between Israel and a lot of neighbors now that are coming together. And Netanyahu made apparently a historic visit to Saudi Arabia to see the Crown Prince bin Salman just recently as well, which, would that signal Israeli-Saudi normalization? And so what's going on here? And is this possibly Israel kind of building an alliance again between its neighbors that could be used against Iran?
Well, let me say at this point, it does not look good for the Palestinians. I've been a lawyer trying to help them since 1982, and I've supported them since 1969 when I first studied the Middle East with Leonard Binder, who was the director of the Middle East Studies program at the University of Chicago and one of the foremost Middle East experts. I'm afraid that if there is a war with Iran, Israel will use this as a cover and a pretext to inflict another round of ethnic cleansing against the Palestinians, like the Nakba in 1967, or even the Nakba in 1948. Basically, the Palestinians are completely defenseless right now. And as Israel sees it, I think, Iran is not really a threat to them because they don't have nukes. Israel has how many nukes these days? The report maybe 100. Who knows? Iran is not really a threat to them, but the Palestinians are. There's still millions of them living there, and Israel wants all of Palestine, and they don't want any of the Palestinians. That was the standard position of Likud, that Jordan is Palestine. Okay, so we could see, if there is war against Iran, massive ethnic cleansing against the Palestinians and driving as many of them out as possible into Jordan. And that is what really concerns me today as we speak of the poor Palestinians.
And I found an article that you wrote as well in 2010, which was interesting, that you wrote the impending collapse of the state of Israel by 2030. And on one hand, as you mentioned, it seems Israel, just in recent news, we've seen them expanding their settlement again into Palestinian territory. So what makes you think Israel will collapse, and have you changed your forecast at all?
No, it's even been reinforced, because now you're going to have your fourth election in 2 years, right? And basically, one of the requirements of international law for a state is to have an effective working government. And they haven't really had an effective working government over there now in the past 2 years with 4 elections. So I think that sort of strengthens my analysis that there's, if you don't have a government, you don't have a state. But certainly you still have Netanyahu in power, and he would see this war and ethnic cleansing against the Palestinians as the solution to what is their so-called demographic problem, which is really racist and genocidal against the Palestinians. So sure, if they can ethnically cleanse the Palestinians out of there into Jordan, that might solve their problems as they see it. Remember that I served as a legal advisor to Chairman Arafat and the PLO on the creation of the state of Palestine, the Palestinian Declaration of November 15, 1988. It was my idea to do that. I did all the legal work on that for them. And then I served as a legal advisor to the Palestinian delegation to the Middle East peace negotiations from 1991 to 1993, and especially its chairman, the late, great Dr. Haider Abdel Shafi, my client and friend. Dr. Abdel Shafi instructed me to draft the counteroffer, the Palestinian counteroffer to the Oslo Agreement. But unfortunately, it was not to be. And the Palestinians took the Oslo Agreement. It's not my counteroffer. Well, they proved my counteroffer, but at the end of the day, they still accepted the Oslo Agreement. In any event, I guess it was 2017, I got the unfortunate word that Dr. Abdul Shafi was dying. So I thought I would have a final conversation with him. We were friends, comrades in arms. We opposed Oslo to the bitter end, believe me, the two of us, comrades in arms there, to say goodbye and also to get his final words of wisdom. So I called there at his home in Gaza. His wife recognized who I was. He gave the phone to him, and his first words were to me, "It is good to hear your voice." And then we had a long talk about the current situation and where to go from here. And Dr. Abdul Shafi said to me in a very firm tone of voice, even though obviously he was frail at that time, and he just said, "The Zionists have not changed their objectives since the Boyle Conference of 1897. Now there's 2017. The Boyle Conference, they want all of Palestine and none of the Palestinians." That was Dr. Abdul Shafi's assessment of the situation before he died. I believe he is correct on that. May he rest in peace. A great man, a great hero for the Palestinians. I can assure my Palestinian Arab friends out there, he did everything humanly possible to stop Oslo with my support. But it was not to be, and now the Palestinians are in the situation they are currently in, and it does not look very good for them at all. They've been abandoned and betrayed now by most of the Arab world, as far as I can tell. But it's always been like that. If you've worked with the Palestinians as long as I have, the Palestinians have always been on their own. So it doesn't surprise me that Kushner and Trump have cut all these deals, and finally the Arab leaders have come out of the closet in public to work in cahoots with Israel and the American Zionists. So it doesn't surprise me at all. It's clear that that had been the case. League of Arab States never did any good for them. The last time the Arab world did anything was the 1973 war, when Israel invaded Egypt, Syria, whatever, and they tried, the Egyptians and the Syrians tried to take their land back that was stolen in 1967, so they called an oil embargo. But at that point, the United States government, Kissinger, threatened them and said, if you ever do that again, we'll destroy you and take your oil fields. That's the U.S. Central Command. That's what it's all about. Then they proceeded to arm, equip, supply, and train the Rapid Deployment Force, which became the Central Command. And then they stole Iraq's oil under Bush Sr. That's what that was all about. And after that, even Huntington, after the Gulf War I, Huntington said that the Persian Gulf was an American lake. And I went through the exact same PhD program at Harvard that produced Huntington before me. But I wouldn't study with him because of his, as a matter of principle, because of his diehard support for the Vietnam War. And other Harvard students saw it the same way. So I'm afraid that the Palestinians are in a very existentially dangerous situation here if there is war against Iran, right?
All right. And so we've covered, I guess, the Middle Eastern waterfront, Iran, Israel, Palestine. And again, I love your book. When I was looking for material on this subject that was authoritative, dealing with international law, foreign policy, and I found Destroying Libya and World Order. And in the book, you explained very well something that I couldn't find anyone else explain so well regarding what was happening in Libya and Syria and the bigger picture. And you wrote that in 2011 that I was always trying to figure out why China and Russia didn't back Gaddafi. And so in 2011, both China and Russia abstained on Resolution 1973, which was the authorization for NATO to bomb Libya. And then you wrote that, quote, Russia had decided to sacrifice their Libyan pawn in order to protect the Syrian Rook and Iranian Queen, as well as its own King Moscow, essentially to buy time for Russia and its allies. And that you said that, I think we know this, that Russia and China are the ultimate objectives. If we look beyond Iran, and yesterday it was reported that American convoys have again illegally entered into Syria in order to just outright flagrantly steal oil. And also Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov made a really, I think, powerful and stern remark again just this week. So many things are happening. Lavrov revealed that the U.S. is attempting to push regime change in Russia and that they're not hiding it at all. So this is extreme hubris, imperial hubris, but it's also dangerous because I think when an empire begins to act so carelessly like this, it means that, it's like they're on the verge of doing something crazy, escalating things. And so how do you see the beyond Iran, the U.S., Russia, China issue? Do you see things could escalate there?
Well, first of all, that's correct about Libya. If you read that Security Council resolution, it was clear that Obama was going to use that resolution as legal authority to destroy Libya. That was very clear. And I've lectured to Russian Soviet lawyers on two lecture tours over there in 86 and 89 as the guest of the Association of Soviet Lawyers. They have first-rate international lawyers over there. I've dealt with them all. They knew when you read that resolution, what was going to happen, and they did not veto it. So it's clear, I think, that, it's sort of like, appeasing Hitler is what it amounted to. But in the case of President Putin, unlike Chamberlain, after Munich, Putin decided we better rearm here. And yes, you have Libya as a pawn, Iran as the next stage here, the Rook. The ultimate objective, of course, is Russia. There's no question about that in my mind. And of course, highly provocative action there with respect to China and the South China Sea. No question about that. I mean, we can discuss that if you want to. But the overall perspective was given by my teacher, mentor, and friend, Hans Morgenthau at the University of Chicago, who founded international political science. And in his classic work, Politics Among Nations, which Kissinger used to teach international relations at Harvard. I went through the exact same PhD program at Harvard that produced Kissinger before me, the Harvard Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, Department of Government, not the Kennedy School. Kennedy School is all U.S. imperial apparatchiks. The government department is where they train future professors. And they gave me Kissinger's old office at Harvard Center for International Affairs. Harvard trained me to be one of these people. But in his book, Politics Among Nations, Morgenthau has a very astute analysis of imperialism and what it's all about. And then he distinguishes what he calls unlimited imperialism. That is, imperialistic states that will try to conquer the entire world if they can get away with it, unless they are stopped. and that examples that he cited were Alexander the Great, the Romans, the Arabs, Napoleon, and Hitler. And this is what we're dealing with here in the United States of America. Unlimited imperialism, as defined by Hans Morgenthau himself and the mentor to Henry Kissinger, that the United States fully intends to conquer as much of the world as they possibly can. And right now, the only three major states standing in the world are Iran, which compared to Russia and China is small, and then Russia and China. Right. This is, I've written about this in one of my books, that this is unlimited imperialism. After 9/11, 2001, that's what that was all about. And to use 9/11, 2001, their war against international terrorism as a pretext to go out and steal as much oil and gas and strategic shipment truck points as possible. And most of that is in the Arab and Muslim world, and to control the world economy. So yes, Russia is a target, and China is a target. And as Morgenthau pointed out, this will continue until an organized group of people stand up to stop them. And it does appear that Putin and Xi have decided to stand up to try to stop them. So, that doesn't look good either. But this is, he said, this is classic behavior that you saw by Alexander the Great, the Romans, Napoleon, and Hitler. And this is the mentality now we have here in the United States, certainly in Washington, CIA, FBI, Pentagon, NSA, all what in the old Soviet Union were called the power ministries. That's what's going on here. And, Trump, Biden, Obama, they're pretty much all the same from that perspective. It'll be one or the other. And as you can see, Biden is just bringing back into power all the Obama people. Obama was behind me at Harvard Law School. We had the same jurisprudence teacher who on the BBC said, quote, Obama is a disaster, unquote. And Obama, as you know, waged warfare against at least 7 different states, including Libya. He took out Libya, tried to take out Syria, destroyed most of it, started the war against Yemen. Outright genocide there in Yemen, as you correctly point out. Our proxy there, the Saudis, are trying to conquer and control Yemen. They have gas and oil and strategic location there right on the Red Sea, guaranteeing access to the Suez Canal. All the oil and gas from the Persian Gulf region goes through the Suez Canal to Europe. And then Somalia, yes, Somalia has large quantities of oil. That was the reason for the Bush Sr. invasion in 1992. Somalia had already been carved up by U.S. oil companies. And then their location there, right on the Persian Gulf area, controlling access again through the Suez Canal. So, the Americans are very strategic thinkers. That's why they have the National War College, right? They just plot war there. I've been to the National War College. I've debated people from there. This is the way they think, the way they operate, and the way they deal. Yes.
Then one more question on the Russian-China. As you said, that the empires won't stop until allies like Putin or Xi stand up. But do you see the potential for the U.S. to just push through and by hook or by crook, by accident, starts real war with China and Russia that would lead, I guess, to another global war. Did you see again this a real possibility?
Yes, of course. As I said before, in some of my writings, we now have here in the United States, and this was before Trump came to power, the unlimited imperialists along the lines of Alexander the Great, the Romans, Napoleon, and Hitler in charge of American foreign policy, and the specters of both World War I and World War II hover over the heads of all humanity. Yes, Biden coming to power, the Biden people are proteges of Zbigniew Brzezinski. I went through the exact same program at Harvard that produced Brzezinski before me, and I offered both Russian history and Soviet politics on my PhD oral general exams at Harvard that qualified me to teach those two subjects to Harvard undergraduates. And Brzezinski is an expatriate, a Pole, hated the Russians with a passion, could not even be rational, and wanted to just break Russia up into its constituent units. Okay, all the foreign affairs and defense people in the Democratic Party today, the Biden people, are proteges of Brzezinski. He was Carter's national security advisor starting in 1976. He was behind the Mujahideen war against Afghanistan, producing al-Qaeda, and in his opinion, it helped crack up the Soviet Union. And then he returned to power with the Obama campaign. Obama studied with him at Columbia. Obama doesn't know anything about foreign affairs, but he studied with Brzezinski. He was his mentor. Obama was his protege. And so what in the Obama campaign and then the Obama administration, all of the people in foreign affairs defense, Brzezinski put them in there. He didn't go back to the government himself, but they were all his proteges. And these are the people that Biden are bringing back to power today, the proteges of Brzezinski, right? So it's a very dangerous situation. Trump seems to have a different attitude towards the Russians, and he's been lambasted over this. Putin's puppet, etc. Mrs. Clinton calling them that. It's preposterous. Not that I support Trump, but no real analytical approach here to what's going on. So if if Biden is inaugurated on January 20th and all the Brzezinski people are back in there, the proteges, it could be very dangerous, yes, against Russia.
All right. Do you have any final thought to leave us with then as we finish off 2020 and move into 2021?
Well, I've given your viewership here my best analysis of the situation here. I know you have, smart, intelligent people out there listening and viewing here, and you'll have to, evaluate what I had to say. But I would encourage everyone to do what you can to try to stop this, as I have. And I'm not telling you what to do. I leave that to your own conscience. But right now we're in a dire situation, and even putting aside the COVID pandemic. So those are my final words. That act in accordance with your conscience.
All right. As always, Dr. Francis Boyle, thank you again for your analysis and the work that you do. I know your semester just finished, so I hope you have a restful winter break. Thanks for being on Geopolitics and Empire.
Well, thank you for having me on. And I know you'll do a great job getting this interview out there. Maybe it'll go viral, and we can be censored off of YouTube tube again. I think that would be wonderful if that were to happen. But happy holidays to everyone out there. What can I say?
I hope you enjoyed this Geopolitics and Empire podcast and interview. I would like to remind you that our website is geopoliticsandempire.com, and you can sign up for our mailing list that goes out each weekend with the latest podcast and a long collection of important news headlines. It's good to sign up for the newsletter in case we experience censorship and deplatforming. You can help the Geopolitics and Empire podcast by subscribing to and interacting with all of our channels such as YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Gab, Minds, and Steemit. You can also help us by leaving a rating and review on your favorite podcast platforms such as iTunes, Castbox, Stitcher, Spreaker, and so on. Finally, if you value our work and our mission and would like to see us continue interviewing experts from across the political spectrum, please consider leaving a one-time donation via PayPal or Bitcoin, or becoming a regular monthly supporter on our Patreon. All the links can be found on geopoliticsandempire.com. Thanks for listening.